18 and I have a 4-year-old daughter. I've been coming to Cedar Point for about 2 years now, and I lived in Tidwell until that time. My mom had 2 children from her first marriage who are older than me. We were poor when I was growing up. We moved from place to place just trying to keep the rent paid, but it never lasted long. My mom and dad always argued and fought, mostly because my dad's a heroin addict and he would do anything he could to get it. My mom was always sick. She was diagnosed with lupus about 6 years ago, which explains why. She couldn't keep a job very long because she would miss a lot for doctor's appointments and illnesses. As a kid, screaming and fighting and drugs were normal to me. I just went with the motions. I was different than most of the other kids in my class at school. I always had headlights and dirty clothes, but I rarely ever went to school anyway. I didn't make friends very easily, but I had my cousin who I called my best friend, and she was in the same situation, so we were pretty close. My mom was always in pain and always irritable, so she could be very mean. She never physically hurt me, but her words stabbed me right in my heart. She didn't teach me how to right my wrongs, she just yelled at me and called me names. My relationship with my dad was pretty good. He was gone a lot, but when he was home, he spent lots of time with me and played with me, and I just really adored him for that. Around age 11, rebellion struck. My mom never was consistent about disciplining me anyway, so it wasn't hard to do whatever I wanted until the court system got involved. My friends introduced me to marijuana around this time, and from there it just got worse. Next it was pills, alcohol, sex, and lastly, heroin. I wanted to be numb. I hated school, I hated my mom, and I hated myself. I ran away 2 or 3 times, and I snuck out just about every weekend. Aunts and uncles tried to take responsibility of me, but they were just as dysfunctional as we were, and it didn't take them long to give up. The court system eventually got involved. They would ask why I ran away and acted like I did, and I said I was just bored and wanted to be with my friends. But the real reason was that at home, I was called a pig and a whore and a slob and told I'd be just like my worthless dad. At the time I was 13, I had been to boot school, Pittsburgh County Detention Center, 2 mental institutions, and I practically lived in the youth shelter every weekend. I became close to the staff there at the shelter and actually experienced some healthy relationships. The counselor that I met there stayed involved in my life years after I left. At 13, I was in a drug and alcohol abuse treatment center, and in there is where I discovered that I was pregnant. I thought that I would finally have something to love me and something that would possibly change my whole life. After I left the treatment center, I was sent home and put in a drug court program that I had to participate in weekly and submit random drug tests for. I became close to the staff there too, and my counselor was part of their team. My mom continued to treat me the way she always had, and my stepdad was still an alcoholic. But I managed to stay sober while I was pregnant. I had this image of what kind of mom I wanted to be, and it was the perfect mom in my head. When Naomi was born, I did really good for a little while, and my mom had separated from her husband and got a new boyfriend, so she was gone all the time and we weren't fighting. I was 14 when Naomi was born, but I was really confident that I could do it all by myself. I started getting overwhelmed as the months went by, and I had no choice but to lean on my mom and extended family for some help. Fortunately, my family adored Naomi. I started getting used to her leaving with them on the weekends. Everything that I had bottled up inside eventually came out, and I was spending my time with old friends and drugs and alcohol. I could no longer pretend that my life was good. The important things in my life didn't matter to me as much anymore. My family knew what was happening, and they called DHS every chance they could, but when I lied my way out of it, they just tried to convince me to give Naomi to them, and I almost did. My mom's relationship with her boyfriend didn't last long, so she was home again and we were fighting all the time. The drug court team was the closest thing I had to a happy family. My counselor was still a part of my life. I always told her everything. No matter how many times I messed up, she always told me that there was something better and I didn't have to live that way. My counselor had a caseworker from Indian Child Welfare come to help my mom and I work on our relationship. My mom still tried to play the victim role, but this lady was smarter than that. Every time my mom got mad at me, she told us that she was done with me. She'd gone as far as kicking Naomi and I out when I was 15. Months went by and things got worse. I dropped out of school and started going to the neighbors to get high. All I wanted to do was party and sleep around. It was the only thing strong enough to numb the pain. In my heart, I had felt disappointment, insecurity, abandonment, hopelessness, and worthlessness. is like a prison within inside myself. Liz, my social worker, still came to see us, and surprisingly she believed me when I said that we were fine and everything was great. But I think she was still uneasy about the whole situation. I had gotten so used to smoking meth with my neighbor that I started buying it from her. I knew it was dangerous because of how much I liked it, but heroin was my first true love. I knew if I allowed myself to use it again, there was no coming back. I understood how my dad felt. At home, my half-brother was living with us, and he had some really serious problems that I'm not even fully aware of, but I did know that he had molested my cousin years before and hadn't seemed to grow any respect for women. So I wasn't comfortable with him and my baby in the same home. And I asked my mom to make him leave, and she said no, because he's her only boy and she didn't care. And so at that point, something snapped, and I knew exactly what to do. I called Liz, and I told her everything that had really been going on and what I was afraid might happen. And the next day, we were brought before the judge and placed in foster care.